Oh wow, that can reach pretty far. All right, we are back, and I believe I didn't have to change much of the settings. Yeah, the game seems to be doing fine. All right, so we're back now. This is kind of the Monster Hunter Wilds marathon or extravaganza. We just keep on playing this game with different types of computers, testing various different setups to see how it runs. So now, this morning, if you tuned in for the morning live stream, we covered the new Intel Core Ultra 7 265K with the AMD Radeon RX 7900 XTX. So that was what we were showcasing earlier. Now we're going to look at a different computer. This is my older computer with the Gigabyte X670E Aorus Master. So this is what used to be the Tech Thursdays PC, but I kind of switched over to the Hero, although I might switch back to this, although I've been troubleshooting like a weird thing trying to isolate a SSD problem or maybe a problem with the board, I don't know. But anyway, so we have the Ryzen 9 7950X3D with the GeForce RTX 4080 Super, just to kind of show the specs in the options. I like how it shows this. Like, it's really easy to showcase the setup. So we've got the Radeon, oh, not Radeon, we have the Ryzen 9 7950X3D. This is a 16 core, 32 thread processor. I am running 48 gigabytes, so I'm undersizing on the memory because the rule of thumb is you want, for every physical core, you want to devote 4 gigabytes of system memory. So if we have 16 physical cores, technically speaking, the correct amount of RAM should be 64 gigabytes of RAM because 16 times 4 equals 64. So I'm undersized on the RAM. But we have clocked this RAM to 8,000 megatransfers. This is my 8,000 megatransfers RAM kit. So this is 2 times 24 at 8,000. So this is the fastest RAM that I have. So we've paired that up with the 7950X3D. This is the fastest gaming CPU that I currently have until the 9800X3D comes out, or the 9950X3D. This is the fastest one for gaming. So I have that paired up with DDR5 8000. And then for the GPU, we're switching it up as the title suggests. Now we're using a GeForce RTX 4080 Super. This is the NVIDIA Founders Edition from Best Buy. And then I have 16 gigabytes of VRAM. So this is a properly sized GPU for this processor. The rule of thumb when building a PC is for every physical core, you should have 1 gigabyte of VRAM per core. So if it's a 16 core processor, you should have 16 gigabytes of VRAM. So that is why the system is configured the way it is. So the only thing that's undersized is the RAM. We should be running 64 gigabytes of RAM to prevent resource contestation between, or congestion between, the cores and the memory system. So the driver is the NVIDIA GeForce driver, the 560.94. This is, I believe, an August driver, so it's one of the earlier drivers, but that's what we're using here to showcase this game. And then we have direct storage compatible. So that's kind of how it's set up. Currently, as you guys can see, we're running the game with NVIDIA DLSS with no frame gen. We're definitely going to test frame gen. With quality, we're running the game on an LG Ultra Gear 32-inch 4K 240 Hz OLED panel. So this is a very high spec monitor. This is probably my best monitor. And then we're running the game at, obviously, 4K resolution. The cap doesn't really matter because, I mean, technically I could crank this up to like 240 or whatever, because that is the refresh rate of the monitor. But it doesn't really matter because, as you guys can see, we're not going to be able to hit that high of a frame rate because this game is just super hard to run at 4K resolution. And then we have everything is kind of set to the high settings. We can go up to ultra. I don't know it. Well, we'll see. Let's test it at high for now. I want to see what the frame rates look like on an experience where it's very playable. But this is very good performance for the X3D. The one thing I will note, you do want to make sure if you are using the 7950 X3D, you want to make sure that you have game mode turned on if you want the Windows scheduler to assign the game to the 3D Vcache or the X3D CCD. Otherwise, if you leave it on stock, it'll behave the opposite. It will prefer the fastest clocked cores, which would be the second CCD. So either you choose game mode or you turn off game mode. And so if you want the game to run on the high frequency cores, you disable game mode. It's that simple. That's all you got to do. It's one button in Windows. You want it to run on the 3D cache CCD cores, you turn on game mode. It's that simple. Again, it's one button. So I have turned on game mode. We have the game running on the 3D cores. So this is how it looks at 1440p effectively on the RTX 4080 Super. So it's actually pretty much identical in performance to the 7900 XTX. The only thing that's different now is the CPU is different, because this morning we were testing with the Intel Core Ultra 7 265K and the Radeon XTX with the exact same settings, exact same resolution scale, and we were getting around the same settings. I'll have to go back and look at the stream footage to get the exact numbers, but the one thing that I noticed is the 4080 Super uses a lot less power than the 4090 and the XTX. The 7900 XTX uses the most power. It's like 350. It's basically maxing the power on the card all the time. The 4090 is using like 312 to 320 something watts. And then this 4080 Super is using about 220 something watts. So it's like 100 watts less than the 4090. So very efficient in terms of this graphics card. It's giving us a playable experience at 4K. Well, technically 1440, but it's upscaled to 4K. So let's go in and check the CPU bound scenario. So as with Intel, when we were here with Intel, we were down in the 40s and 50s. So let's see if X3D makes a significant difference. We have to wait for everybody to load in. But if we run through here, you guys can see this is actually probably the best CPU right now, or at least the AMD X3D CPUs are probably the best ones for this game. It certainly seems like that's the case. Alright, here comes the other players. Let's just kind of stand here and wait for them now. You have 3 gigabytes of VRAM per core. Actually, am I starting this stream too early? We are actually a little bit early. So the schedule for the stream was supposed to be at the top of the hour, but whatever. I am in a session, am I? Yeah, we're in a session. There's like a lot of people in here. Alright, here they come. Alright, here comes that CPU bound. Whoa, it's actually holding pretty good. It is holding pretty good. It's holding around 60. This is very impressive, considering what we witnessed this morning, as well as what we have been reading on the Steam forums regarding this game's performance. So the 7950 X3D can literally brute force its way through a CPU bottleneck and keep the frames right around 60. This is very impressive. Oh, there we go. Now it's falling below 60. But yeah, this is still the highest CPU bound frame rate that I've seen in testing multiple systems now. So man, yeah, the X3D is definitely the way to go if you want to play Monster Hunter Wilds. Like, by far, this is the smoothest one. Let's see let's see how low we can get it. Alright, I saw 53 for a second. I saw 53. So it looks like the minimum is like 53 frames. Else we can break that record later on. But wow, that is that's pretty good. All things considered, that is very, very impressive. Threadripper was dipping below 60. Intel Core Ultra was like way below 60. We were in the 40s in this area. So, wow. Man. I almost wonder if Intel, if the Core Ultra had access to hyper-threading on those P-cores. Those P-cores were overwhelmed. So, just to kind of show people, as people are joining in here now, 13 concurrent viewers. So, now I Alt-Tab out to get to the task manager. So this is how the game runs on the 16-core 32-thread with game mode and the window in focus. It's going to schedule the game to the 3D V cache or the X3D cache, also known as the first CCD. It's going to schedule the game to that CCD. So you're going to see the utilization shift to what I call the gaming cores, the 3D V cache cores, and you can see the second half of the CPU, the lower half, is going to do nothing with the game, so it's going to basically sit there and do nothing. Now, if you don't want it to run exclusively on X3D, then all you got to do is turn off game mode. It's that simple. Otherwise, this is giving us the best performance. But you guys can see, like, we go outside and it shifts back up. So, very, very interesting. Very interesting. It would be nice if the next generation of Zen, like Zen 6, for example, if AMD develops a hardware-based scheduler like what Intel has with Thread Director, I feel like that would help alleviate any sort of inconsistencies with Windows, because we're relying on Windows and the chipset driver to basically maintain the thread scheduling so that it's running on the 3D Vcache cores. Now, the other thing too is when I Alt-Tab out, check this out. If I Alt-Tab, now you'll see the game starts getting pushed to the other half of the CPU, essentially. So it's going to basically split. And I'm trying to look to see if the game, like if the frame rate actually changes when doing that. The other way to test this would be to disable game mode in Windows and then relaunch the game. But yeah, that's kind of how it is. Just to kind of show, just to run through the settings, we are running with 48 gigabytes of system memory, and you can see it's using almost half of my RAM. We are running at 8,000 megatransfers RAM on an X670E Aorus Master. So this is my previous generation motherboard with the X3D CPU. And then we're using the GeForce RTX 4080 Super, and I believe we're using, yeah, is it that one or is it this one? Oh, wait, okay, so it's dual encoding. That's weird. So it's dual encoding for some weird reason, even though it doesn't have to do that. I don't know why it shows the streaming code like this. But we are streaming using the NVIDIA encoder for this one. This is actually NVIDIA's HEVC. We're testing that one and not the AV1. And then we have the integrated Ryzen or the Radeon graphics on the Ryzen CPUs. Integrated graphics literally sitting there doing nothing. Well, that's it. So 8,000. We got max speed RAM for the lowest idle power consumption and the highest performance for a high-end motherboard. So running 8,000 plus X3D because we can. So, and you guys can see, this is how, so without the scheduling, the game, so Windows wants to do this. This is the behavior if you disable game mode and you let Windows handle the scheduling. Notice what it's doing. It's basically pushing the game on the high frequency cores down here. But when we go back into the game, the game mode scheduler tells the operating system, hey, we're supposed to be running this on the 3D cores or the 3D cache cores. So now it's going to shift the load over to the other CCD. So you can see that happening in real time. The other thing too is it does make good use of AMD's simultaneous multi-threading. I call that DBZ split form technique in the Saiyan saga. So basically every single P core, these are 16 P cores, they basically do split form technique, so they can handle 2 tasks simultaneously. Hence they are dual thread. That is why this is a 16 core processor, but in reality it is 32 threads in Windows eyes. So basically here, what we've done is with game mode, we're running it on the 3D Vcache cores. Nesori, thanks for the sub. You just ended a session at low settings. Deal us some performance at 50-ish. Yeah, you're definitely going to want the X3D. This Thursday, the 9800 X3D is launching. That will most likely, like 99.5% chance, maybe, well, we can probably say 100% chance, that will be the fastest gaming CPU. Because it has Zen 5, so it's brand new architecture with the 3D cache, and it can be overclocked like a regular non-3D cache CPU because of the way it was engineered. So that is definitely my top recommendation. It also uses extremely low amounts of power. Just to get this task manager out of the way. So we're playing the game. We are only pulling like 58 watts. We'll call it 15. We'll just say 60 watts. 60 watts on a 16 core 7950X3D on an air cooler. This is literally just a Noctua air cooler. No liquid cooling, just air. And we are playing the game at 58 watts at 4K. Well, technically we should say, I guess, 1440 because it's upscaled right now. But that's how the game runs. So we are actually GPU limited right now. This is a GPU bind situation that we're in. Let's go ahead and improve the performance. So right now, NVIDIA DLSS quality. Let's go to NVIDIA DLAA, Deep Learning Anti-Aliasing. Now we're running the game at 4K native resolution with DLAA upscale, or not upscaling, anti-aliasing. And here, the RTX 4080 Super is only capable of 45, well, we'll just call it 45 to 50 frames per second at 4K native resolution. This is the maximum potential of the RTX 4080 Super. Let's crank it up even more. Let's make it even harder on the graphics card. Let's go to Ultra preset. Now we've maxed the graphics settings at 4K. And now we've lost some frames. Now we're under 45. We're around 45 instead of between 45 and 50. So now we're in the lower half. So we've lost about 5 frames of performance by going from high settings to ultra settings. So this is how the game runs on the 4080 Super. We are 100% GPU limited in this scenario. And you guys can see we are running the game at 45 frames per second. So now let's fix this by using everybody's savior in gaming, frame generation. Uses frame generation technology to increase frame rate. So enable the frame gen. Here we go. Oh, look at that. Look at the frame gen. Wow. Frame gen to the rescue, and now we are able to achieve a above 60 FPS average at 4K native resolution with everything at ultra settings. So I can tell that the developers of this game intended for you to play this game with frame gen. This was designed with frame gen in mind, just like Final Fantasy 16. So the conclusion that I'm drawing from doing all this testing on all these different graphics cards, on all these different CPUs, and all these different recent games, the Capcom developers and the Square Enix developers are embracing frame gen technology, and they want the gamers to make use of it, because this is how you're able to achieve like plus 60 FPS even at 4K with a extremely high-end graphics card. Sounds like the 7800 X3D wattage wise, so I think you're running into a wattage limit. I don't think we're running into a wattage limit. This is how the game runs. Frame gen works really good. Yeah. Well, now frame gen. Okay, there is one thing I want to test. So let's see. Well, let's kind of look at this for a second. I want to see what does my average look like on here. It's looking like it's around 69 to 71. So we'll just call it around 70 frames. It's around 70 frames. Now what I want to do, I want to switch this off, and I want to switch over to AMD FSR 3. So AMD FSR 3, and let's go to AMD native AA. This should result in the same, like 43 or so FPS. This is actually, yeah, 43 FPS. So there's our 45. So the same deal as what we saw with DLAA. Now, let's go in here and turn on frame gen. So now we're using the FSR 3 frame gen. And it's basically the same. The only problem is Capcom does need to fix the after image ghosting effect that exists with the FSR 3 frame gen. That is something that I'm sure they can improve, but that is something to note. There is currently some after image, it looks like motion blur or ghosting with the FSR 3 frame gen. So I did want to point that out because that does happen with FSR 3 frame gen in this title. Now, later this evening, I will be streaming this game again, featuring a Zen 5 flagship. So we'll be looking at the Ryzen 9 9950X with the Radeon 7900 XTX. So we're going to be doing an AMD plus AMD build. So that one, that will give me access to a technology that AMD has called fluid motion frames. So I want to test this game with fluid motion frames because there are claims circulating on the internet right now that if you use fluid motion frames, you do not have this after image ghosting effect that you get with FSR 3 frame gen. So I want to see if that's true or false. So that'll probably be what we test next. Yeah, so that's the only issue with running the game with frame gen on FSR 3. So DLSS doesn't have that problem when you use the deep learning style frame gen, but it is something on the temporal one. This can be corrected though. Look at her hair. Look at her hair like fading in and out. Although let's switch over to the DLSS. And why does it always default to quality? No. Go to DLAA. Okay. So now, see? I mean, there's like a tiny bit of it, but it's not nearly as bad. It's not nearly as bad with the DLAA plus frame gen. So honestly, this is probably how I'm going to play the actual game when it releases. I'm going to be using frame gen at 4K with either DLAA or the FSR 3 anti-aliasing, depending on which system I'm playing the game on. So if we're using the live stream, we'll be using the AMD graphics card. If we're using Threadripper, we're going to be using a 4090 to play this game. And then if I'm using, you know, the OLED or whatever, it just kind of depends on what's on the test bench at the time. So yeah, this game runs really good. So as far as I'm concerned, unless you're on like a 5-year-old computer, you're going to have problems if you're on a 5-year-old computer. But if you're on anything that's like 3 years or newer, you won't have any problems. The game runs super good. I mean, unless you're on an older NVIDIA card. For some reason, older NVIDIA cards are basically left to rot because they can't, like, there's problems. People in the stream yesterday were telling me that when they have their 3080 and they try to turn, well, they, first of all, the 3080, all the 30 series, they don't even have access to NVIDIA's frame gen because NVIDIA denies their own customers that feature because they want them to spend more money and buy 40 series. So that's kind of a, you know, that's kind of a bad look, to be honest. So what the 30 series people are doing, they're trying to go to AMD to rescue them from the lousy frame rate. But the problem is with AMD, because it's an unsupported configuration, AMD obviously is not obligated to test 30 series graphics cards. That's their competitor, so they shouldn't not be testing 30 series cards. So the unfortunate reality is when people with a 3080, for instance, are going into here and they're turning on frame gen, their game is crashing. So there's been lots of reports of that. So that is one thing to note. But yeah, this ghosting, like, look at the hair. Look at the hair. That's not good. I mean, I'm probably gonna play the game like this at release, but hopefully they fix that, because that's really immersion breaking stuff right there with that weird ghosting effect. So, alright, but anyway, that shows you how the game runs on X3D. It runs real good on X3D, man. Like, this is the best I've ever seen it perform in the base camp with X3D. So X3D definitely is the way to go. That's my top recommendation, although I kind of already knew that without even doing any of these tests. I already assumed this was going to be the case. If you need DLSS and frame gen to play a game, your GPU can't run it. I don't think that's true. I think the developers intended for them to use frame gen. That's just the reality that the gaming landscape is going into from the developer side. But yeah, this is how the game runs at 4K ultra settings. It runs pretty good. Let's do a hunt, actually. Let's go back in here and do a hunt. The other thing, too, that FrameGen does, FrameGen removes the CPU... Well, it doesn't remove the CPU bottleneck. It masks the CPU bottleneck. So, for example, we're in the city. I see the frame rate go down. And it goes down because of the CPU bottleneck. But because of FrameGen, it's cranking out so many synthetic frames that you don't even really notice that there's a CPU bottleneck. Okay, let's actually switch this back over. Let's go to DLSS and switch this back to DLAA and turn on the frame gen. Perfecto. All right, let's do a hunt. This is really good, man. This looks really good. All right, let's join a quest here. Let's hunt. What's something that won't take super long? That's almost done. That's 20 minutes ago. This is 2 minutes ago. Let's hunt Radau, just because. Frame gen and upscaling. Wait, you need a frame cap if the CPU or GPU runs hot? Yeah, you guys should not be running uncapped frame rates. People who are running uncapped frame rates don't understand how hardware works. Here, hold on. In fact, what is my frame rate cap? 240? Okay. Alright, here we go. I'm coming in to help this guy out. And he flew off. He flew off. He ran away as soon as he saw me approaching. Radau, like, flies away. He's like, oh no, more people. Alright, 4080 Super, don't fail me now. Oh man, it's dipping. Look at that dip. Come Come on, I'm gonna probably have to run it. We'll have to test 1440 without frame gen. See if that's any better. Yeah, you're right, man. Raydal is chunky. This thing is tanking the frame rate. Man, those 4K spell effects, though. Still managed to do 105 damage, even though I wasn't even close to it. It's hard for me to watch my... It's hard for me to see my HP bar, though, with that overlay in the way. Get him, hammered on. Whoa, 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 whoa. Alright, get him. Yeah, oh, I didn't climb on him. Oh, I hit his tail. Yeah, get that fire flash. Oh, the tail does have a wound. Come on. Man, this game is so good. Yeah, those spell effects, the lightning and stuff is tanking the FPS. So let's try... Here, let's try something different. Let's turn this off. Let's go no frame gen. But instead, we're going to drop this to 1440p with no frame gen. Let's see how 1440p handles this. Or how the 4080 Super handles 1440p upscaled to 4K with no frame gen. Yeah, see, it's already like in the 50s. This is actually worse than 4K with frame gen. At least with this GPU. Okay, it actually went up, but let's see what happens as we do the spell effects, because I have a feeling it's still going to drop a lot. I'm running this on Ultra, that's the other thing too. If I drop it to high, I'm pretty sure it will stay above 60. This game is so good, man. I can't stop playing it, even though all this data is going to get deleted, like, after Sunday. I just can't stop. It's so good. This makes me want to quit Genshin Impact and go back to Monster Hunter World. And I don't even really play Genshin Impact anymore. Oh, no. Oh. Yeah, this is 1440p Ultra, for those wondering. For those tuning in, this is the 1440p Ultra performance. Well, that was a good tail swipe. He got me good right there. Made me have to heal. Why is he just, like, looking? Raydal's just looking. How come I'm unable... Am I not climbing on the monster properly? There's a way to climb on it, at least in World. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. It should still be in the game. Yeah, okay, it does look like 1440p, although we're in a different environment. We're in the desert. We're no longer in the grass area. So it's hard to say. But see, like, here's Here's the thing, though. Like, if we... Whoops. Here, let's do this. Frame gen. Let's turn on frame gen. Now we've got 1440p with frame gen. Ooh, now the frame rate is really high. I feel like this is how the developers intended for the game to be played. It's like they wanted you to use frame gen. I know that a lot of Japanese game studios are definitely going in that direction. Like, they go to a lot of seminars talking about frame gen and how they need to, like, improve their games. And one of the things that they always talk about is FSR 3 frame gen and DLSS frame gen. And I think Sony wants that in the PS5 Pro as well. I wouldn't be surprised. Oh, he's gonna do a big explosion. He's mad. He's mad. I should not stay near the face. Oh, let's cut the tail off if we can. While they're all attacking the head, I'm gonna try to go for the tail, cut the tail off. In this scenario, we are GPU bound. So the CPU right here doesn't make a difference. You won't see any difference in CPU performance with any of the CPUs in this situation, because this is not a CPU bottleneck situation. This is a GPU bound scenario. When you're out in the field and there's not a lot of human players around, in this case I only got like 2 other guys over here helping out with the fight, or I'm actually helping them with the fight, you're not going to see a difference. It's going to come down to the GPU. You go to the base camp, then you will witness the difference in CPU. And currently, the X3D is the king for playing this game. Ooh, that was close. Almost got me with that. Should I switch to the bow? No, actually, let's do this. Let's sharpen the weapon while on the move. No, X3D never uses that much power while gaming. You're never gonna see high power on the CPU. Okay, we'll see. We'll see when we're done with this hunt. You'll see what happens when we go to a CPU bottleneck. Anytime I go to the base camp, we will become CPU bound, so you will witness the wattage when we're there. But I can tell we're definitely GPU bound because the 4080 is using a lot of power right now. Normally, it would only be at like 190, 200 something watts. It's actually around 240 something to 250. That is a lot of power for a 4080. Ooh, he got on top of him. What do I do here? Oh, let me heal up, actually. And I should probably eat the rations. Oh, turf war. Hold on, I need to... Where's my well-done steak? What does that do? Eat a well-done steak. Does that max out my stamina? I think so, yeah, that maxes out the stamina. He used a lot of energy to fend off that random monster that attacked. Oh, that monster's still here, too. Oh, I missed. This is my golden opportunity right there. Just do this then. I don't think that will improve things that much if there's dual CC, if like both CCDs have the cache. I mean, they may end up doing it though, because now that they've changed the architecture, the cache is now underneath the cores instead of above them. So they could potentially go that route if they wanted to, because it can still hit higher clocks. And it can still be overclocked. So yeah, they could do that. It depends on cache coherency though. Alright, let me see here. Where's he headed? Oh, he's almost dead because he has the skull icon. So this is close to ending the hunt. He's gonna fly to zone 16. Or area 16. Yeah, he's on the move. It's such an amazing game. We've already explained that in Tech Thursdays. Go watch the last episode of Tech Thursdays if you want to see the paint description. Well, unless someone in the chat wants to explain that, I'm not going to answer that again. I mean, that requires a whole like 30-minute PowerPoint presentation and a whole bunch of drawings to illustrate that. Man, he's tired, I can tell. He's really tired. He's barely fighting back. I almost feel kind of sad for these monsters sometimes. Like, they're like, why don't these humans leave me alone? He's like, I didn't even do anything wrong. I didn't even do anything wrong. What are you guys doing? Why are you guys attacking me? It's like, get away from me. You know, like, he's like, what is going on here? What is up with these humans? Moving again? The sound of the monster makes it sound like it's probably a female monster. It's almost like it's Rathian instead of Rathalos. Oh, I think this is going to be the final area, actually. Okay. I don't think I have the bombs with me. Yeah, I don't think I have the bombs. So yeah, someone put the bombs down. Wait, I don't need to sharpen. I don't have bombs, dude. What they want me to do it? Or they want me to do this? Okay. No, dude, don't throw it at him like that. What the? That was terrible. That was a terrible miss. Yeah, the shield and sword guy is doing a pretty good job. pulling aggro and tanking. Oh, I almost cut that tail. Trying to cut the tail off. Oh boy. I want to cut the tail. Oh man, I was hoping that I would trade that big hit, but I got hit instead. The timer went in favor of the monster. I need to heal again. I'm super low. I almost died there. In fact, I'm really low, and I can barely see my HP bar because of that overlay. Oh, that was it. Yeah, if you get hit by the monster in this part of the fight, whoa, that's gonna take a lot of damage. Okay. Yeah, if you get hit from these, I'm out of healing items. This is not good. Luckily, the Palico is here. There. There we go. Oh boy. I have no healing items. I'm super low on health. Get some of these. Yes, let the cat tank. Whoa! Whoa! Okay, I think the last... It actually fended us off. Because this is normally where the monster dies. But it actually fended us off. I'm probably gonna switch to a different weapon. We need to craft these. I need to go and like farm items. I'm running out of stuff. Oh, a turf war, another one? Oh, there's the tail. Okay, the tail does have the... If I can break the tail again. There! Did it fall off? Is that low? Is that shorter than before? I don't know. I don't see it on the ground anywhere. There. Did the tail... I don't... Oh, it did? No. Oh, yeah, it did fall off. Is that it? Yeah, this is it. That's the tail. Okay. The game is very CPU heavy. All Capcom games made using the RE engine, the Resident Evil engine, which is what this game is using, are CPU heavy. This is well known. Dragon's Dogma 2 was the same scenario. Actually, Dragon's Dogma 2 was even worse. That's the most CPU bound game I've ever played. And this game is on the exact same engine. So, yeah, why are they acting like... Oh, I guess the lightning storm? Well, yes, the next computer will be the 9950X with the Radeon 7900 XTX Sapphire Nitro. That'll probably be the last one that is covered. Okay, now you can see this is what happens when you go into the base camp, and this is where the CPU bottleneck will occur. We just gotta wait for everybody to show up. There we go. Here come the people. The people come in and they drop the frame rate, indicating the CPU bottleneck. Yeah, this is definitely the CPU bound scenario. Anyway, this is how the game runs at 1440p. Let's go back to 4K. So now it's 4K. This is 4K with the super what do they call it? DLAA. So anti-aliasing. This is native 4K with anti-aliasing handled by deep learning. And yeah, you're gonna see higher wattage because you're in an area where the CPU is doing a lot more work now. So naturally it's gonna be up. But I can tell you, like, compared to the single CCD, this one's gonna use a little bit more power than a 7800X3 that will be even lower power than this. But yeah, this is what you can expect for maximum power consumption. There we go, 70 something. But yeah, let's just run through here a little bit and kind of see what it does. But yeah, this is it. This is extremely low power though, man. Like the Intel used way more power than this. The Threadripper used way more power than this. So like this thing is like barely using that much power, and even though it's in a CPU bottleneck situation. So that's very impressive. This is the reason why the X3D is the best CPU for gaming. You guys do realize we are using an air cooler, right? This is literally just a Noctua air cooler. We're not using any liquid cooling or none of that stuff. No, this is just an air cooler. It's a Noctua NHD15. So I go outside, and now we are GPU bound again. The CPU bound goes away. And we can see now the frame rate is like 70. Let's go back in here real quick, create the CPU bottleneck, because the average is going to go down because of the people. So the people appear, and they lower the frame rate. See, now we're closer to 60 because of the CPU bind. Yeah, no, X3D is what you want to be using. If you're planning to upgrade your computer, like if you're on a 5-year-old computer, because most of the complaints that I've seen from like Steam forums and people complaining about this game's performance, they're typically on old computers. Like if somebody has a i7 9700K, I'm sorry, that thing is ancient. It's a terrible dinosaur at this point. So that needs to be replaced. The optimal choice would be the 9800X3D, which comes out this Thursday. But if you can't manage to get one of those, and you want high thread count, and you don't want to wait until next year for the 9950X3D, then this CPU, the 7950X3D, is an excellent choice, as shown here. Because this is the only one that I've seen that has maintained the best average in the CPU-bound scenario. It's higher than Threadripper. It's higher than the Intel Core Ultra. You know, that was what we looked at this morning. So if you missed that live stream, you're going to want to check out the live stream that was earlier today. That was taking a look at the Intel Core Ultra 7 265K with the Radeon 7900 XTX. So the 4080 Super and the XTX basically run the game identically in terms of the frame rate. Like, they both perform the same. They're functionally the same in this title. Yeah, 10700K is a 4-year-old computer, so you're past the 3-year mark. That processor was brand new in 2020. So yeah, that could be refreshed to a 9800X3D, and the 9800X3D would basically be a completely different planet in terms of performance. For the 9800X3D, which kit of RAM to buy? 34. I only recommend 48 gigabytes or 64 or 96. I don't recommend 32 anymore. I think it's the minimum. So the other thing too is okay. Objectively speaking, if you want to know the rule of thumb, we said this at the very beginning of the stream. I'll say it again. The rule of thumb for how much RAM you need depends on how many cores your CPU has. So for every individual CPU core, you need 4 gigabytes of system RAM to have no issues with resource limitations or what I call resource congestion or congestion. So if I have an 8-core CPU, 8 times 4 equals 32 gigabytes of RAM. So that is the minimum. The minimum amount is based off of the number of cores times 4. This is the rule of thumb. Anybody who builds workstations or professional PCs know this to be true. This is like a well understood thing that I think a lot of gamers don't actually know about. But that's the reason why I never have weird stuttering and resource issues, because I understand what the amount of RAM needs to be for a given computer. Now, that being said, we are undersized on the RAM for this CPU. This is a 16-core CPU. 16 times 4 equals 64. So technically, I should be running 64 gigs of RAM. However, I'm running 48 gigs of RAM. Why? Because I'm running a 8,000 megatransfers kit. So we are currently running the RAM at 8,000. Just to kind of show people, let's bring up the task manager again, because I know a lot of people, these questions were answered at the very beginning of the stream, but there's a bunch of people that couldn't catch the beginning, so we're going to go over this again. So 16 core, 32 thread. This is a 32 thread beast. This thing crushes through the shader compiling of this title. That is one of the reasons why I really like the 16-core X3D versus just the 8-core. But that being said, here you can see we are running 48 gigabytes of memory, so we are undersized on the RAM, because technically I should be running at least 64 gigabytes of RAM. But that being said, we're running 8,000 mega transfers. So that's, there you go, 8,000, 2 sticks. That's 2 times 24 at 8,000. So then we've got a bunch of SSDs. I got 4 M.2 drives in here. And then, so it's like fully loaded. This is the Gigabyte X670E Aorus Master. So this is a 2-year-old motherboard designed for Zen 4 CPUs. In this case, that is a perfect choice for the 7950X 3D. And then for the GPU, we are using the NVIDIA GeForce Founders Edition from Best Buy, RTX 4080 Super. And you guys can see the game is here running, and then I've got the stream encode running here on HEVC. And then finally, we have the integrated Radeon graphics on the Ryzen CPU, literally doing absolutely nothing. So that's pretty much it. Let's go back to the game. But yeah, I recommend for most people 48 gigs because you can benefit from high speed. If you want to run 8000, there are a lot of very good 8000 kits, like the one in the description of this video, which is the one that we are using right now. And then the nice thing about this particular kit that I'm using, the reason why I recommend this one, that's why I put it in the description if you're interested in running this type of RAM, because this RAM does 8000 at 1.35 volts. We're running very low voltages with this RAM. I'm only running 1.35 volts on the memory, and the VSOC is running at 1.2 volts. In fact, it's actually 1.18. So let me pull up Zen timings real quick. Let's see where that's at. So Zen timings will show you guys, and basically what I did was I just let Gigabyte set the high bandwidth option in the BIOS. So where is that at? Okay, and for some reason NVIDIA has this annoying thing where it's like it blanks out the monitor when I change settings. Okay, so here are the Zen timings. So we can see speed. This is a Ryzen 9 7950X 3D 16-core processor. We're on the latest BIOS from Gigabyte. This is the X670E Aorus Master, as I said earlier. The speed is 8,000 megatransfers, capacity 48 gigabytes. M clock is at 4 gigahertz because it is half of the 8,000, hence we are running at 4,000. We are running in a 2-to-1 ratio. That means the memory controller is running at 2 gigahertz. That is the U clock. It is now synchronized perfectly in a 1-to-1 synchronization ratio with the fabric. They're both running at 2 gigahertz, which means I have 0 buffering and I have the lowest latency possible, but from fabric to memory controller. VSOC is running at 1.18 volts. So again, we have very low VSOC, which means we are running at very low idle power consumption. So this is the benefit of running 8,000 versus running at like 6,000 or 6,200 or 6,400, where in those scenarios, you want to run in a 1-to-1 ratio, which means your U clock is going to be running around 3 gigahertz or higher, which means you have to pump copious amounts of VSOC voltage, which ultimately means you have much higher idle power consumption. And that is the reason why this 8000 is actually superior in a lot of subtle ways. The memory itself runs this speed, 4 gigahertz on the mem clock, at a tiny low 1.35 volts on the VDD, and the VDD-Q is 1.35. And finally, VDD-IO is at 1.35. TREFI was automatically tuned by Gigabyte for this kit and the CPU's memory controller to run at 62,400. So this is very high spec memory running with a very high TREFI value that the BIOS selected for me because I didn't have time to waste troubleshooting or stability testing. But I've been running this RAM kit for a long time, pretty much over a year now, so I know exactly how it behaves. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So this fast RAM plus X3D combined together with full synchronization of fabric and memory controller results in the lowest latency and ultimately the best, most optimal gaming experience for a game like Monster Hunter Wilds. So anyway, the maximum DDR5 for that would be, well, the maximum can be whatever you want. It's never about maximum, it's always about minimum. You can run 192 gigabytes on a 9800XT if you want. I mean, I have a video showing how to do that. But the thing is, the point is, you want to look at minimum. You don't care about maximum RAM. Maximum RAM is only, first of all, maximum RAM is going to lower your potential maximum speed. The more RAM you have, the harder it is to run at high speed. So keep that in mind. So ideally, if you want to run your RAM very fast, you want 48 gigabytes of RAM. If you want to run a lot of RAM, you want to run 2 sticks of 48 for a total of 96 gigabytes and aim for around 6,000. That's pretty much going to be the upper limit, 6,000. So basically the choices are 6,000, DDR5, 6,000, 96 gigabytes, or DDR5, 8,000, 48 gigabytes. These sticks hit 8,000 at night. No, they don't. No, you have to be using 2 sticks. You cannot do 8,000 with 4 sticks of memory. You can only do that on Threadripper because Threadripper is a 1DPC motherboard. This is a 2DPC config on consumer desktop, so that is going to be something that you cannot do. What I can tell you, though, is you can run 4 of these sticks at 6,000. So you can do 96 gigabytes at 6,000 with 2 different kits of this same RAM that's in the description of the video. I have done this with the X870E Crosshair Hero. I basically ran it that way for a whole month. And then I recently moved the RAM into other systems like this one. That is going to depend on the motherboard. So it's going to depend on the motherboard, guys. Here's the thing. We said this in yesterday's live stream. We said this in the last episode of Tech Thursdays. Actually, I think it was Tech Thursdays. It wasn't yesterday. It was Tech Thursdays. So if you missed Tech Thursdays, which was episode, I think, 83, which was 2 days ago, all of those questions about RAM were answered on that live stream. I can't guarantee that. You have to... See, here's the thing. Well, I'm gonna summarize that live stream. I'm not gonna go through the whole thing right now, but what I'm gonna say is this. When you run your RAM at 6,000, and you want to run 1-to-1, the limiting factor is your CPU. That's the limiting factor. You're gonna be limited if your CPU can do it or not. If you want to run your RAM at 8,000, the CPU still plays a role, because some CPUs can't do 8,000, you just get unlucky. But the most limiting factor on running 8,000 is going to be the motherboard itself. Because when the RAM is running at very high frequency... Okay, let's illustrate this. I'm going to illustrate this in-game. So, this is Gear 1. This is DDR5 6000. And I need my memory controller to read for me the names of the players in this session while the camera is still moving at this speed. This is DDR5 6000. So the memory controller can handle it. This is 6000 in Gear 2 mode, also known as 2-to-1 ratio. It is much slower, so it is much easier for the CPU to read. If I go to Gear 1, it's cranking higher. It's harder to read because it's going faster. Now, if I want to run the RAM at 8,000, now I'm running at 8,000. Now I want the computer to read the names of the players while it's spinning this fast. It's going to be much more challenging for the PC to pick out the data because the RAM is running so much faster. This is 8,000. This is 6,000. This is 6,000 gear 1. Or no, this is 6,000 gear 2, 6,000 gear 1, 8,000. I hope that concept is clear. So, the limiting factor is going to be the motherboard when the RAM runs at very high speed, because if the motherboard is high-end and has very good wire trace quality to isolate the noise, you can run at 8,000 and it can see a clear image despite it being very fast. If we have a low-end motherboard, now we have a low-end motherboard. A low-end motherboard will have a more noisy, messy signal. So in this scenario, we're still running at 8,000, but because the image is blurrier and noisier, because the motherboard's quality is lower and not as crystal clear in its wire traces and quality, it is harder and harder for the CPU, if not impossible, for the CPU to pick out the data. So I hope that illustration demonstrates why the motherboard matters when running high-speed DDR5 at 8,000. So that answers the question. Tested with 2 high-end motherboards. Of course, 2. IMC just couldn't. Many claimed 8200 on the 14900K. What many didn't say is that binned 10 CPUs to find one. Yeah, no, man. No. 13900K, 14900K, good luck trying to do 8000. It's super... Well, okay, 14900K has better luck. I can tell you, my 13900K cannot run 8000. Even on a $500 motherboard. A Z790 Gigabyte Aorus Master plus the 13900K cannot do 8000. It does not work. For me, my CPU, I lost the Silicon Lottery. So on Intel, if you want to run high-speed RAM, it is very dependent on the CPU. If your CPU can't do it, you're literally playing the lottery. And you got a 1 out of 10 chance. You got a 10% chance. If your CPU, you buy an Intel, you got a 10% chance that you can run 8000 on a 14900K or a 13900K. Just FYI. I played that lottery, I lost. My 13900K can't do it. Cannot do it at all. So, and that's with this exact same kit of RAM. This kit of RAM, Intel XMP. I bought it for a 13900K. Doesn't even work with a 13900K. I stick it in a 7950 X3D. Works perfectly. That's all you need to know. So, very disappointed with the 13900K. And I've had that CPU for over 2 years now. I've relegated it to being a back room, like, home server. I don't even use it for gaming. And that's why I never had to worry about it dying. Because I never used it for gaming. And gaming is what killed those things. The Nova can handle... Yes. Well, okay. See, the thing is, I hope I answered that question. I hope I answered the question. The answer is, I don't know. I can't tell you yes or no because I've never tested the Nova. So I don't know if the Nova can do it. What I can tell you is the ASRock Taichi can do 8000, and the ASRock Steel Legend can also do 8000. Now, I don't know about the Nova. I've never tested it. But if you guys really want to run high-speed RAM, like if you're really interested in running RAM like what I'm running right now, you need to invest in a high-end motherboard. That's the other thing, too. I want to stress this point. If you're trying to save money on buying a motherboard, go with DDR5 6000 because it's guaranteed to work on every motherboard. If you want to run high-speed memory like DDR5 8000, you must invest in a high-end motherboard. Otherwise, you are definitely not guaranteed to hit those speeds because the speed is going to be going like this. It's going to be spinning round and round. And the better the motherboard, the more sharp the signal, the more clarity the CPU will have looking down at the memory, trying to like time those shots like right through, despite it going so fast. Otherwise, you can run it at 6,000, which is like this. It's easier. At 6,000, it's much easier to time those shots. 8,000 is going faster. It's harder. We're going round and round. So it's much, much harder to do. You got to have a higher quality motherboard to do it. The motherboard is the determining factor of 8,000. The CPU is the determining factor of 6,000 or 6,400. That is the TLDR of this entire conversation. Tai Chi should be good. Do you guys really want ASRock though? That's the thing too. Like, what are you guys familiar with? I recently did a whole video on the ASRock BIOS for the X870E Tai Chi. So if you have never used ASRock before, you may want to watch that video to familiarize yourself with the BIOS menu. Hey Russell, thanks for the sub. I mean, the other thing too is you can always look at the QVL list. The easiest thing to do is look at the QVL list for the motherboard that you're interested in and see if those speeds are showing up in the list. Even if it's not the kit that I am using, if they've qualified another kit for 8,000, then you can either buy that other kit, or you can just kind of deduce that, okay, if Hynix MDI 8000 is working on, you know, Team Power or V-Color or whatever, it's most likely going to work on G-Skill or whatever, even if they didn't verify it across the G-Skill kit. But there always could be some minor differences in the sub-timings, so do keep that in mind. There is a difference between the QVL certified RAM and like one that's not on the actual list. The main difference is that the ASRock or whoever the motherboard manufacturer is, they literally tested the RAM themselves and they guaranteed it to work. So with that motherboard, if it's not on the QVL list, that doesn't mean that it doesn't work. That just means that nobody from that vendor tested the RAM. Tai Chi is considered more high-end than the Nova. Hence why it's more expensive than the Nova. So if I was going to... Let's put it this way. I'll say this. Now, I have not tested the Nova, so I can't really say anything specific on the Nova, because I haven't had no hands-on time with it. What I can say is, typically, in ASRock's product stack, the Tai Chi is their highest-end board. And that one is going to have all the overclocking tools. So for example, someone already commented on my BIOS video that the Tai Chi, they kind of wished, or they kind of sort of hinted at, they kind of wished that they got the Tai Chi over the Nova, because the Tai Chi has the external clock, like the asynchronous mode feature. Apparently the Nova does not have that feature, which is kind of what I expected because of its price point. So that is another thing that kind of stands out, that indicates to me that the Tai Chi is probably going to be able to handle higher speed RAM more consistently than the Nova. But that's ASRock. So if you're going ASRock, yeah, it's either going to be the Tai Chi, the Nova, the Tai Chi Lite, something along those lines if you want to run high speed RAM. But again, you want to check the QVL list. Ooh, this guy looks like Frieza. This dude looks like Frieza. Wow. Frieza's in the session. Your motherboard doesn't have the E-clock? Well, B-clock and E-clock is the same thing. But you don't want B-clock... If you don't have asynchronous mode, you don't want to be changing B-clock. Do not change the B-clock if you don't have asynchronous mode on your motherboard. You're going to mess up your NVMe drives. You're going to mess up your PCIe signaling. The memory's going to be running too fast. It's just going to mess everything up. Most things for overclocking and power users, the Taichi is going to be better than the Nova. The main thing about the Nova that makes it so good is the price and the amount of stuff that it gives you for that amount of money. I mean, that's ultimately what it is, the value. It's the only $350 motherboard that has a full backplate. No other motherboard has ever done that. So, I mean, there's stuff that it has as just like, man, you just got to give the win to the Nova for most people. But I would say if an enthusiast is looking for a motherboard, they could go with the Nova, because the only thing they're missing out on really is the B clock overclocking capability on the Taichi. The only other thing that might be a thing is the potential for running higher speed DDR5, because maybe the Taichi is a higher quality board, hence why it's $100 more. So you have to keep that in mind. You know, like there's a saying that somebody taught me years ago, and the saying is something like, you get what you pay for. You get what you pay for. If you pay $300 something for a motherboard, it's going to be better than if you paid $100 for a motherboard. Assuming new, not used, not secondhand, not refurb, we're talking brand new, apples to apples. $100 motherboard versus a $300 motherboard. And then the same goes for like a $300 motherboard to a $500 motherboard. After $500, there's almost no difference. There's literally no difference. Like a Strix and a Hero, they're basically going to be the same. A Master and an Extreme, they're basically going to be the same. So, yeah, once you like $500 is kind of the end game for motherboard pricing in terms of dollar per value, I guess, or how much value you're getting out of a motherboard based off of how many dollars you're spending on it. Whereas once you go to $700, $1,000, $1,300, it's like you're literally just throwing money in the trash at that point, because you're not really gaining that much more in terms of functionality versus a $500 motherboard. B clock overclocks everything, yes, and therefore it gets even more performance than E clock. Well, yeah, I know, but it's kind of weird to overclock NVMe. The signaling can get so much more noisier. I don't even know if there's no real performance benefit for overclocking SSDs and stuff, because you could be running into, you're more likely to run into like CRCs and issues with like errors and things like that. I wouldn't do it personally. I would only use the B clock if I have asynchronous mode, which means I have to have an external clock generator to separate the clock domain. In terms of functionality, the Taichi, well, again, it depends. The Taichi gives you an X8 of Gen 5 that's tied to the other GPU, well, the PCIe X16. The Nova doesn't do that. The Nova doesn't have any GPU lane sharing at all. The Nova does not give you an X8 slot. The Nova does not give you an X4 slot. It gives you an X2 slot that shares bandwidth with the 5th M.2. So it's nice to have a 5th M.2, but, you know, it's gonna come down to use case, guys. Like, it's not about, like, one motherboard's better than another. It's like, objectively, in terms of value, the Nova is giving you more value than the Taichi, hence why I rated it as an S plus motherboard, because nothing else had the same amount of value at the price point. However, that doesn't mean that the Taichi can't be better than the Nova in certain things. In this case, overclocking. The Taichi is going to be better than the Nova. You're confused. Well, you have to decide how you're going to use your computer. I can't tell you how you're going to use your computer. You have to decide how you're going to use your computer. Only you know if you're going to use overclocking features. Only you know if you're going to populate like 4 or more NVMe drives. If you just want to build a gaming computer to play Monster Hunter Wilds, like I'm doing right now, you just need to get a decent motherboard and run the DDR5 at 6000. If you want to be an enthusiast and try to go deep into understanding the hardware and test things like, for instance, DDR5 8000, which is what I'm running right now, then you're going to want to get a high-end motherboard like the Tai Chi. If you want just a gaming PC and you want to save money but get max value, get the Nova. For people not doing world records, all motherboards... Exactly. Exactly. Yes. For most people, a $350 motherboard is the absolute maximum amount of money they should spend on a motherboard. In some cases, I would say $500 is the maximum that someone should spend on a motherboard. Anything above that is a waste of money, unless you're looking for some very specific thing that only a handful of motherboards offer. And if you're already that far over the edge, then you're not the typical gamer or casual person who just wants to play Monster Hunter or Call of Duty. You know, like that's, yeah, that we're not even talking about the same type of individual at that point. Any motherboard would do, just pick it. Yeah, well, I mean, the I/O is going to come down to use case. That's why I always tell people, it depends on how you use your computer. What are you going to do with the computer? Are you just going to sit there and play games? You're never going to, like, you're not going to do power user functions. You're not going to do video editing. You're not going to do, like, and the funny thing, the reality is anybody can take any random computer and they can still do video editing on it. They can still do, like, productivity on it. You can run Excel on, like, every computer from the last 10 years. Now, are we talking Monte Carlo simulations and, like, a whole bunch of data sets and that sort of thing? Again, now we're moving into the realm of a power user or a specific use case. So that's, again, kind of, like, off topic. No, you don't need 8000 DDR5 for Monster Hunter Wilds. No. You don't need that. Just because I'm running the game with an 8000 memory kit doesn't mean that the average gamer needs DDR5 8000. This is basically showing what it takes to get the utmost best performance and experience. You basically want the highest RAM. In this case, we're running DDR5 8000 because we can. The motherboard can do it, so we're going to do it. And we're going to combine that with X3D for the best, most least likely to CPU bottleneck scenario. So this is it. This is like as good as it gets, essentially. This is the utmost. But not everybody needs this. Like, this is overkill. This is overkill, guys. We're literally playing the game and we're in a CPU bottleneck and we're still above 60 frames per second. Like, and we're playing the game at 4K. This is 4K resolution. 4K native maxed out ultra settings in a CPU bottleneck situation and we're still like touching around 60. Alright. That pretty much covered it. We did a hunt. I used a Switch Axe. I don't know what weapon I'm going to do on the final stream. We will be doing one more stream later this evening featuring a Ryzen 9 9950X with a Radeon 7900 XTX. So that'll be the next one that I'll be showcasing the game on. When the 9800X3D will come out, which motherboard will you use? I haven't decided yet. Honestly, I haven't decided yet. It's either gonna be this one, or it's gonna be the Hero. It's gonna be or it might be the Tai Chi. Now that I think about it, it might be the Tai Chi. I might build it in the Tai Chi, but then move it later. So it's either gonna be the Aorus Master, the ASRock Tai Chi, or the Asus Crosshair Hero. It'll be one of those three. Yeah, we can build it in Tai Chi. I'll do the live build on the Tai Chi. And we may move the CPU around and test different motherboards. So yeah, that'll give me more content for the Tai Chi. Currently, the Tai Chi is sitting in a box, being unused. The Tai Chi was loaned to me from one of the longtime viewers and supporters of the channel, RK Benchmarker. RK Benchmarker is the owner of the Tai Chi, guys. I don't own the Tai Chi. It's not my motherboard. It was loaned to me out of the kindness of RK Benchmarker's heart to let me use that motherboard so I could create content for viewers like you. So shout out to RK Benchmarker, because without that loaning me the motherboard, I would have never made any of these videos with the Tai Chi. So, yeah. Same thing goes for the Tomahawk. The X870 Tomahawk was also loaned to me by RK Benchmarker. So if it wasn't for RK, you guys would have seen like no videos on this channel for the Tai Chi, and you would have seen no videos with the Tomahawk. So I want to stress that enough. Not only that, but RK also provided the memory kit, like one of the memory kits that I've been using. So for the live builds. So we got like super high-end RAM that barely even works on a lot of these boards because it's like 8400. DDR5 80. Basically, RK provided an 8400 XMP memory kit from G-Skill and two motherboards. The flagship Tai Chi, the X870E Tai Chi, and the very good value, probably the king of the X870 class, not X670E, X870 Tomahawk. That is one of the best X870 boards. That's the one that I gave the win to in terms of like S tier on the X870 class of boards. So yeah, really, really good, man. Like those. So yeah, we'll probably do. Now that I think about it, I'll probably build the 9800X3D using the X870E Tai Chi with an 8000 kit of memory to test it out. So you'll probably do that. Yeah, that's what I'll do. That way I don't have to tear apart my Gigabyte board that we're using with the X3D, the 7950X3D, and I don't have to touch my Asus motherboard, which has the 9950X. That is my Tech Thursdays live stream machine, so I don't have to disturb that computer. So yeah, that's probably what we'll do. You can't afford the 700. Well, you don't really have to spend 700 on the motherboard, guys. Like, okay, that pretty much covers. How are we doing on time? Yeah, so that pretty much covers everything I wanted to say regarding the performance with an X3D. But the results from the 750X3D are very promising. This is extremely good performance from this CPU. Like, this is, so far, this is the best CPU that I have tested for this game. Every other CPU that we've looked at so far has not performed as well. So Intel was about 20 frames worse in the town, or in the base camp. And Threadripper was a little, it was like either the same as the Intel, or I couldn't really tell. It's probably the same as the Intel, because it doesn't have an X3D. So, but yeah, that's kind of where we're at. Most games can be improved from the kit which I have. Marginally, yes. But I think you're overlooking the other things that I stated earlier in terms of the benefits of running DDR5 8000. It's not just about gaming. So we're not going to regurgitate those again, because that'll be like the 5th time saying that. But go check out the most recent episode of Tech Thursdays if you want to understand why the 8000 RAM is a good idea, but there are some caveats. You have to have a very high-end motherboard for one thing. And there is always the rare chance that the CPU can't do 8000. It's rare, but it could happen. However, it's far less likely to be a CPU-related limitation, because at 8000, the CPU doesn't run the memory controller that aggressively. Tech and Tools Garage just subscribed to the channel. Thanks for the sub. You're on AM4, so outdated max CPU for gaming is 5800. That, you know, I'm really curious to know, like, how the 5800X3D handles this game. I would imagine it handles the game fine. I think it's probably fine. I mean, the X3D, Zen 4 X3D is doing really good in this game. I mean, this is 4K native. This is 4K native right here. Yeah, this is DLAA, 4K native. So, really, really good. With X3D, memory speed isn't critical, at least with older ones, not sure. It's never critical, though. That's the thing. It's never critical. If somebody wants to run 8000 on Zen 4, they can. If somebody wants to run 8000 on Intel, good luck with that. Because it's really hard, because they're playing Silicon Lottery a lot. But if somebody wants to run 8000 on X3D, they can. They can do it if they want. There's nothing wrong with it. Like, they're going to get better, slightly better performance. So it's like, well, you can do it. Like, it's like when someone's saying, oh, you can overclock a, you know, that's the whole, like, oh, you can overclock an i7 to match an i9, even though that's, like, no difference to start. But it's like, okay, you can overclock the i9. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I came across the same situation with the 9950X, because I was like, okay, I can overclock the 9950X to hit like 46,000 in Cinebench R23. That is only 4 points short of a stock Threadripper, which does about 50,000 in R23. But then I realized, wait a minute, I mean, I can just overclock the Threadripper, and the Threadripper will just pull even further ahead. So the overclocking a CPU to match another CPU, that argument is kind of lame, because it's like, you can just do the overclock on the other proc as well. So it's, you know, so it's kind of like, yeah, it still falls into product segmentation, and you get what you pay for, and that sort of mentality. And that's why they keep bringing the vendors keep moving the goalposts, especially nvidia. Nvidia has continuously made their parts more and more expensive and harder for gamers to obtain. So I expect them to do the exact same thing again with the 50 series. They're going to make the 5090 even more expensive, significantly more expensive than the 4090 was. Because why not? They can do it if they want, and the Nvidia fans will cheer them on. They're all for it. They want that stock price to go as high as possible. Get those profit margins in, boys. That's exactly the mentality, man. That's exactly what it is. With X3D, memory speed isn't... Oh, yeah, okay, I read that again. The beta made you want to upgrade the PC. Well, what do you have right now? So, if you guys can, like... I guess we're going to end the stream soon, but post in the chat what your current PC is, so I have an idea of what my viewers are using, because I'm very curious to know, like, are my viewers using a 5-year-old computer, a 3-year-old computer, current generation hardware, like, what's the graphics card, what's the monitor that they're playing, or, like, what's the resolution? The thing that annoys me when I read Steam forums of people complaining about the game and how it runs poorly for them, they post their GPU, and then they don't even, like, they don't state the monitor. They never state the monitor. So it's like, The game runs like trash. RTX 4080. Game runs like trash. Terrible optimization. Bad game. Like, that comment means nothing. Because it's like, are you playing at 8K or something, dude? Like, what are you doing? What are you doing wrong? Clearly something's wrong with you. And then because you're going to get another guy's going to post a comment saying, I'm playing it on the 4080 and it runs fine. I'm getting 80 FPS. I'm getting 60 to 80 FPS all the time. It's fine. The problem's on your end. You know, like, but that guy might be playing the game at 1440p, whereas the first guy might be playing the game at 4K. You know, like, they never state the resolution of their monitor, so it's like, it creates just confusion and it just invalidates their entire argument. $10700K, 3080. Man, that PC is the epitome of the pandemic. That is what I call a pandemic PC. Anyone on 10th gen Intel or Ryzen 5000 with a 30 series GPU, I call that a pandemic PC. Because that PC was new in like 2020, 2021. See, I know. See? Pandemic PC. You're like, it was a pandemic PC? Told you. I know. So every time I see someone with 10th gen or 11th gen or Ryzen 5000, but it's not X3D, it's like 5800X, 5600X, 5950X. I'm thinking, man, that is just straight up like pandemic PC right there. But anyway, guys, so we've been streaming now for about an hour, 43 minutes. We're going to go ahead and end the stream here. I'll be back this evening, though, so you guys can take a break. We'll probably be back. I'm going to probably take about 3 to 4 hours before the next stream. That gives people an idea of when to expect me going live again. But yeah, we'll be back this evening with the 9950X and the 7900 XTX. So until then, guys, take care, and I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.